Sawadee ka! Welcome to Hot Thai Kitchen. So when I used to live in San Francisco, I worked close to a popular Vietnamese restaurant called The Slanted Door, and it was famous for a dish called caramel chicken, a salty, sweet, braised chicken dish that almost every table ordered. Now, recently I came across their recipe, which has been published in many publications because it's like a famous dish from a famous place. But I was shocked to find that there's actually no caramel in their caramel chicken. So this took me down a rabbit hole of caramel chicken research because I got very curious. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today, my version of actually caramel chicken. Let's get started. I'm going to first prep the chicken. I'm using boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I'm trimming off some excess fat and then cutting them into 1.5 inch pieces. Don't cut them too small because they will shrink quite a bit when they're cooked. Bone-in whole chicken thighs will also work, and I'll talk more about how you'll need to adjust in the blog post. Then I'm going to add some fish sauce and just let that marinate while I prep other things. For the aromatics, we're using really basic stuff you might even already have right now. The shallots, I'm going to just thinly julienne. The garlic just needs a rough chop. And the ginger, I'm going to slice off any woody ends, thinly slice into rounds, and then finely julienne. And no, I did not peel my ginger. Peeling ginger is a royal pain in the behind that doesn't even need to be done most of the time. The skin is so thin, by the time you slice it into small pieces, you're not going to even feel it. So stop wasting your time scraping it with a teaspoon or whatever it is you're doing and just wash it. Unless you're going to grate it, in which case peeling does make it grate a little more easily. And that's all the chopping you need to do. This is a great weeknight meal. Now let's make the fish sauce caramel. I'm adding some chopped palm sugar to a pot here, and I'm going to let that melt and caramelize over medium-high heat. And this is an important step because caramelizing sugar develops a ton of flavor, adds so much complexity to the dish. You can use white sugar for this as well because you're going to be getting a lot of flavor from the caramel, that it's not a major compromise. If you see some dark spots, stir it to even out the color. Now you want this dark brown. The definition of caramel is burnt sugar, so it should look burnt, but not quite black. This is about right. Off the heat and immediately add coconut water to stop the cooking. More on that in a bit. The sugar is gonna seize up and look kind of crazy. That's totally normal. Put it back on the heat and cook it for just a minute more until everything is dissolved. Then turn off the heat and add fish sauce and rice vinegar. That's the fish sauce caramel, and you can actually make a whole bunch of this, keep it in the fridge, it'll last forever, makes your meal even faster. Let's talk about the caramel. As I mentioned earlier, the Slanted Doors version doesn't have this caramelizing step. What they use instead, and what many people use, is dark brown sugar. But caramelizing is the traditional method, and I think it yields a better flavor, or at least the traditional flavor of this dish. For restaurants, the brown sugar will definitely help with consistency, so I can see why they would do it. But at home, I encourage you to make the caramel because it only takes a few minutes for this amount. Now, let's get the braise going. I'm using this wok here because it happens to be the perfect size, but anything about 10 inch in diameter will work. I'm sauteing our aromatics in some oil, and if I had had enough coffee this morning, I would have remembered to add my black pepper at this step as well. But oh well. Once the shallots are translucent, I'm going to push everything to one side and then slide my chicken in and spread it out into one layer as much as I can. Now I'm going to flick all of the aromatics up on top of the chicken to protect them from the heat while the chicken is searing. Yes, I could have removed the aromatics at this point and put them back in later, but this works. Now, the chicken is pretty crowded, so you're not going to get a ton of browning, but if you let it sit undisturbed for a few minutes, you will get some browning, and any browning is better than none because browning is flavor. If you're ambitious, you can cook the chicken in batches if you like, but in the spirit of a simple home-cooked meal that this dish is supposed to be, this will do. I'm looking for some nice color on the chicken, just like this. And then I'm going to toss everything together and pour our caramel sauce over. I'm gonna let it simmer for about 15 minutes until the chicken is fork tender and the sauce will have thickened into a nice consistency, and you wanna be stirring every few minutes to even things out. In Vietnamese cuisine, this type of dish involving braising of meat is called kho, and you can make a kho using all sorts of meat. So pork belly and eggs is a classic combination, but you can even do it with fish. So while the chicken is braising, let's talk a little bit about the choice of braising liquid. So I was really surprised to find that coconut water is what's used in the braising liquid, because in Thailand, we have coconut water out the wazoo, but we don't use it in this way. But it does add a nice natural sweetness, a subtle complexity that really works. You can use chicken stock instead, but I would up the sugar by about a teaspoon just to make up for the sweetness. But you know what really surprised me? I found out that instead of coconut water, some people use this. This is a coconut flavored soda. It's a Puerto Rican drink. But back in the day when coconut water wasn't as widely available as it is now, a lot of Vietnamese Americans started using this instead. And then over time, it just became a thing. And now you can get this wherever you would buy your Vietnamese groceries. It is very sweet though. Even for me as a drink, it's too sweet. So if you were to use this, you'd have to use less sugar, which means less caramel flavor. So it wouldn't be my first choice. All right, so it's been 15 minutes. I'm checking that the thickest piece of my chicken is fork tender. It is, and now, this is so important. You absolutely need to taste the sauce, because how much your sauce reduces is gonna vary depending on how hot your heat was, how wide your pan is, etc., etc. So you need to make sure the sauce is not too diluted or too strong. Ooh. Oh, that's really good, but, and I can even sort of tell, it's a little bit too strong. As this stove is very powerful. It's hard to get the stove low. So I'm gonna add just a splash of water. If it's tasting too diluted, you just need to keep it reducing for a couple more minutes. Look at that color. I'm also gonna add a splash of fish sauce because this is feeling a little too sweet for me. And this is something you will have to adjust. If it's too sweet, a little fish sauce plus a little vinegar will help. Nice. One last tasting. That's perfect. Ooh, that's good. To finish, I'm just gonna toss in some fresh Thai chilies and some green onions. And by adding the chilies in big chunks like this, it'll gently infuse a little bit of heat. But if anyone at the table wants it extra spicy, they can take the piece and eat it. It's a great trick if you're serving people with different spice tolerances. Sprinkle a little more green onions on, cilantro will work here as well, and a few juliennes of ginger is nice so people know that it's in there. And that's it, dinner is ready. So as I'm sitting here getting ready to eat, I noticed that I have a tiny little bowl of black pepper sitting in front of me, which I forgot to put it in the dish. So we're gonna put it on right now, which is not quite the same, but close enough. Anyway, always serve this with rice. It just looks, that color just looks so good. It looks like I would add a dark soy sauce or something to get that color, but it's all from the caramel. What consistently surprises me about this dish is how rich and complex the flavor is given how few ingredients went in there, right? And you think like that sauce has a bunch of different things, but it's just fish sauce and caramelized sugar. And that's a touch of vinegar and coconut water, sure, but the main things are quite simple. And it delivers so much oomph of flavor, and it's so quick. Like I've been able to pull this off on a weeknight with no issues. You can make the caramel sauce in advance, keep it in the fridge to make it even faster, a side of vegetables, and this is all you need. This is so good and so easy, and I hope you give it a try. The recipe, as always, is on hotthaikitchen.com, and a very special thanks to all of our Patreon members who help support the show. If you want to know what that's all about, how you can get bonus content, you can check out the link in the description below. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time. สวัสดีค่ะ